We have two other procedures that we've taken the opportunity to put in place through the whole process that aren't mandated by the ministry. There aren't guidelines in place to do these ones like the first two we talked about, but they are complete the whole package in which we deal with student accommodations. The first one is the attendance area review, which is school boundaries. Through its accommodation and planning review, the board considers and addresses potential adjustments to attendance areas. This is rationalizing space in attendance areas. So we have excess space at this school and neighboring school. We have capacity issues at this school. Is there a way to adjust the attendance area to move some kids over? But it can be as, it is an important part. We are moving students. We are breaking peer groups up. So there is a process we have to follow to make sure that the public is informed about it, and it's a decision the trustees do not take lightly. So we do have a procedure involved to ensure that that's done. Now there is exemptions, as we just talked about, from this process. If the attendance area is being done as part of the accommodation review, as part of the other process, we have to create attendance areas because every school has to have an attendance area. So if we're doing a school consolidation, we will be adjusting the attendance area. That will be part of the recommendation that's in the goes through the pupil accommodation review process, so it will be looked after there. If there's less than 10 students involved, we still take a report to the trustees, but we're not going to follow this process for the minimum number of students. Changing location of the program, so if any programs or part of the programs which does not have an associated attendance area, for instance, a congregated spec ed class. So we're changing a system classroom. We don't go through this process. Changing the location of any optional programs or part of an optional program that has an attendance area. So this would be like French immersion or tech emphasis. We won't go through the attendance area review, but there's wording that would be in place that we have to get board approval on the consultation process of that special program. And any proposed amendments that do not affect any current students. So if there's no students involved, we can make an attendance area adjustment without having to go through this process. And this has a lot to do with new subdivisions and new development, where there's nobody there yet. We want to put that attendance area out of this school and move it over to this school before anybody shows up at the site. This procedure does not apply to adult or con-ed facilities. There's a section in the procedure that talks about grandparenting. Really, it basically says that any existing students there prior to the attendance area review that potentially could be left there as an opportunity to be grandparents approved by the board. So we have that. We've been using that clause in the last number of years, so there is that option that the grade 7s could graduate with their school and so on and so forth. So we do have a clause, and it will be discussed on a case-by-case basis, along with the transportation that those students may require. The first step in the attendance area review is an initial attendance area report to the trustees with one or more recommendations of amending the attendance areas. We'll have current and proposed attendance maps. We'll do enrollment and accommodations. We'll do enrollment projections. We'll talk about current and proposed residential development and community trends. So, are we in decline? Are we in growth? Why are we doing this? Proposed timelines of when we make the adjustment in the attendance area review. Any input we receive from the community organizations that we have with the annual meeting will be included in this process. And the dates and schedules of respective meetings that we'll have with respect to the public process. Now this is the attendance area review committee. This basic role is, and again, we've tried to mirror the pupil accommodation with respect to it because in a lot of ways the process is very similar. We're moving kids or adjusting kids in program. So they are to act as a conduit of information between us and the community. So again, we're using the same language. We're going to use the same process. And again, they won't be asked to approve or entitled to approve the attendance area report or the final attendance area report. For each school, again, the committee will be made up similar to the ARC, other than we did not put students on the area attendance review committees. Other than that, they're the same as the ARC process with 2 parents in each division, home and school president or chair of the school council and president of the home and school. And again, for holding zones and FNI populations, they would have representatives. The same with the secondary. Again, no students were involved, but the membership's basically the same. At the area attendance area review committee meeting, we'll have a meeting with them, review the overall attendance area review process, review relevant information, review the roles and responsibilities of the attendance area review committee, present the applicable report to them, and take questions and clarifications on the roles and responsibilities of the members and any questions on the initial report. And this meeting will also be open to the public. After the Area Attendance Review Committee meeting, we will be providing the opportunities to share and explain. We'll ask them to go back and have a school level meeting. There'll be at least one school level meeting required. They'll provide the school committee with an explanation of what they heard at the community meeting and obtain input from their school community and compile questions and additional information that they may ask of us to help them understand why we're doing certain things or other options. They'll have a question and answer period and a discussion if they need any more school level meetings. They have to have this meeting within 30 days of the committee meeting. Primary responsibility of this committee, again, the subcommittees is again to prepare written comments containing the input they received from their school community, and they do not need to reach consensus again as to the content of their written report. This information requested. Within 90 days of the receiving their input, final attendance area review report will be completed by senior administration. It will include our final recommendations, and the copies of them will be circulated to all the respective ARC subcommittees. And in there will be the date of the scheduled delegation meeting and when the trustees are expected to make a decision on adjusting attendance areas. The final report presentation meeting will be presented again. The trustees can ask us questions of clarification, but there will be no debate or vote on the attendance area until after the public delegation meeting. Again, same following the ARC process, there will be a public delegation meeting, an opportunity for the members of the public to provide feedback directly to the trustees. Again, directly to the trustees, so we're following the pupil accommodation review process again to allow them to have their say directly to the trustees, not through the subcommittee. And then notice of the meeting and the final report will be presented to the board website at least 10 days prior. So your question about notice is with respect to that, usually a 10-day notice issue. The trustees have the authority to approve it, defer it, modify the recommendations before it goes through the process. And we'll communicate with the timelines of implementation, the availability of school programs, and related transportation information to all the school communities with respect to that. So again, this is a process that we developed, and I am going quickly aware of the time, but we followed the pupil accommodation process. We're trying to invoke school subcommittees. We're trying to get community feedback. We're asking them to discuss the issue because it is adjusting students and their schools, potentially moving students around from one school to another for various reasons to do with accommodation. We just completed one of these with respect to Pere Trudeau in St. Thomas, and we got the ARC subcommittee reports, which were great. They did exactly what we asked them to do. We got a really good understanding of the community feels, in which it helped us create a final report that we'll present to the trustees on Tuesday night. And there'll still be a public delegation opportunity for those parents and community representatives to come speak to the trustees before any final decisions made. So again, it's more of an opportunity. The two big procedures are guidelines coming from the ministry, but this helps complete the whole accommodation process. And as I said before, adjustments to attendance areas are as emotional as school closures for the parents and the communities involved when we start splitting up communities and moving them to another school. And we want to make sure that the parents are heard, the community's heard, the trustees have a well-rounded understanding of the information, and senior administration has to provide a business case of why we're doing it, why we need to do it. At the same time, the community needs to be heard, so we put that process in place. Is there any questions on this procedure? Yes?
So, based on the information that will appear in the guidelines of this attendance review, did Peter Elliott first in this situation qualify?
That's correct, because it's a program. But what the trustees asked us to do to allow that adjustment, again, we use that process. This is a modeling, knowing that it would go forward. But what it says in the procedure that we have to go to the trustees with an approval, with a plan to do the public consultation, which may require us to do exactly what we just did in St. Thomas. or it may be something different. Because a program is a tricky thing to deal with, if you look at some of the different programs we have, like Tech Emphasis or some of the other programs, they're all a little different. So what we're trying to say is any regular track school, 9 to 12, K to 8 school will follow this process. Program schools are exempt from the process, but if you read the procedure, we're required to take a plan to the trustees of how we're going to consult with the public, and it could be the trustees say to us, follow the same process. But before we can start the process, they're going to tell us how to consult with the public on it. So you're correct, because it would be exempt because of a program, but understanding the sensitivity around it. But not all programs could be dealt with the same way because of just the immensity of the board, so on and so forth. So we want to be able to deal with it that way. But we were sensitive to that. The trustees were sensitive to that at policy working to make sure there was a process in place that at least the same level of consultation would happen with the public. Any other questions on that procedure?